He is worth $400 million. He is one of the most recognizable faces in the history of cinema. He has saved the world on screen more times than most people can count. And yet, for 20 years, Keanu Reeves went home to an empty house. Not because no one wanted him, because he couldn't let anyone in. The woman he loved died at 28. The daughter they made together never took a single breath. And the man the internet would one day call the nicest person in Hollywood spent 2 decades carrying a grief so heavy that even he, the man who played the unkillable John Wick, couldn't fight his way out of it. This is the story of what broke Keanu Reeves, what kept him broken, and the moment, after 20 years of silence, when he finally let someone reach him again. He was born in Beirut, Lebanon, on September 2, 1964. His mother, Patricia Taylor, was an English costume designer. His father, Samuel Nolan Reeves, was a geologist from Hawaii, with Chinese, Hawaiian, and Portuguese blood running through his veins. The name Keanu is Hawaiian. It means cool breeze over the mountains. It was the most beautiful thing his father ever gave him, because by the time Keanu was 3 years old, his father walked out the door and never came back. He saw his father once when he was 6. Again when he was 13. After that, nothing. His father drifted into alcoholism and was eventually imprisoned in Hawaii for selling heroin. When interviewers would ask about him decades later, Keanu would give the same quiet answer. He has no relationship with his father. No anger in his voice, no resentment, just the flat tone of a man who had long ago accepted that some people simply choose to leave. His mother moved the family to Sydney, then to New York, then finally to Toronto, where Keanu would spend most of his childhood. She worked in film and television, which meant long hours and constant moves. She married and divorced multiple times. Keanu counted at least 4 stepfathers before he turned 16. Each one arrived with the promise of stability, each one left. He found his stability on ice. In Toronto, at De La Salle College, Keanu became a hockey goalie so talented that his teammates gave him a nickname, The Wall. He was fast, fearless, and nearly impossible to score on. He dreamed of playing for the Canadian Olympic team. Scouts were watching. A path was forming. And then, the way things tend to happen in Keanu's life, the path disappeared. An injury sidelined him. A drama teacher noticed him, and the boy who had spent his childhood watching people leave decided to become someone who could inhabit other people's lives because his own had never quite felt like home. He dropped out of high school. He moved to Los Angeles at 20 with nothing but a car and a dream that even he wasn't sure he believed in. His first real film role came in 1986, a hockey movie called Youngblood, where he played a French-Canadian goalie. The role he'd been training for his whole life, except now the ice was fake and the goals didn't count. 3 years later, in 1989, he played Ted Theodore Logan in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and overnight, the quiet kid from Toronto became a pop culture phenomenon. The film grossed $40 million on a budget of 10. Keanu was 24, famous, and for the first time in his life, people were staying. But Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with him. Was he the surfer? The action star? The serious actor? Keanu didn't know either. So he became all of them. Point Break in 1991 with Kathryn Bigelow. Speed in 1994 with Sandra Bullock, a woman who would later admit she had a crush on him during filming. A crush Keanu apparently had too, though neither of them ever acted on it. He was building a career that looked, from the outside, like a steady climb toward the kind of life most people only dream about. But in October of 1993, something happened that cracked the foundation. His best friend, River Phoenix, collapsed and died of a drug overdose on the sidewalk outside the Viper Room in Los Angeles. He was 23 years old. Keanu had considered River a brother. They had starred together in My Own Private Idaho just 2 years earlier. The loss hollowed something out of Keanu that the cameras would never quite capture, but that everyone who knew him could feel. There was a stillness that settled into him after River's death, a quietness that went deeper than introversion. It was the stillness of a man who had learned, once again, that the people you love can disappear without warning. 6 years later, in 1999, Keanu Reeves became the biggest movie star on the planet. The Matrix wasn't just a film, it was a cultural earthquake. He played Neo, a man who discovers that the reality he's been living in is a lie. And the image of Keanu in that long black coat, bending backward to dodge bullets in slow motion, became one of the defining moments of a generation. The film earned over $460 million worldwide and redefined what action cinema could be. But here is what most people don't know about what Keanu did with that money. He gave a significant portion of his back-end earnings from the Matrix sequels, an estimated $75 million, to the special effects and costume design teams. He bought custom Harley-Davidson motorcycles for every member of his 12-person stunt crew. When asked why, he simply said the crew were the ones who made the film what it was. This wasn't publicity. He didn't announce it. The stories leaked out years later from crew members who still couldn't believe it. In 1998, at a promotional party for his band Dogstar, Keanu met a woman named Jennifer Syme. She was 26, an actress and personal assistant with dark eyes and a laugh that made him feel, for the first time in years, like standing still might be okay. They fell in love quickly, the way people do when both of them know what it feels like to be lonely in a room full of people. By early 1999, Jennifer was pregnant. They were building something, a home, a family, a future that, for a man who had spent his entire life watching futures collapse, felt almost too good to be real. It was. On December 24, 1999, 8 months into the pregnancy, Jennifer gave birth to their daughter. Her name was Ava Archer Syme Reeves. She was stillborn. She never opened her eyes. She never took a breath. Christmas Eve. And the only sound in the hospital room was the silence where a cry should have been. They tried to survive it together. But grief has a way of turning the people you love into strangers. Keanu and Jennifer broke up several weeks after Ava's death. Not because the love was gone, because every time they looked at each other, they saw the thing they had lost. They remained friends, close friends, the kind of friends who call each other at 2 in the morning because the silence gets too loud. Jennifer struggled. She had a history of depression, and the loss of Ava sent her into a spiral that the people around her couldn't stop. On April 2, 2001, Jennifer Syme attended a party at Marilyn Manson's house in Los Angeles. Someone drove her home. But sometime later that night, she got back behind the wheel of her Jeep Grand Cherokee and tried to drive back to the party. On Cahuenga Boulevard, she lost control. The Jeep struck a row of parked cars. Jennifer was not wearing a seatbelt. She was ejected from the vehicle. She was 28 years old. She died instantly. Keanu was one of the pallbearers at her funeral. Jennifer was buried next to their daughter Ava at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery. A mother and a child who never met, resting side by side. In the space of 17 months, Keanu Reeves had lost his unborn daughter and the woman he loved. He was 36 years old, and he simply stopped. He didn't talk about it. He didn't do press tours about grief. He didn't write a memoir or sit on a talk show and cry for the cameras. He just went quiet, in the way that only someone carrying a weight that heavy can go quiet, where the silence isn't empty but full, packed so tight with everything you can't say that there's no room left for noise. He kept working. The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions came out in 2003, Constantine in 2005, The Lake House in 2006. He showed up on time, knew every line, treated every crew member with respect, and went home alone. Always alone. For nearly 20 years, Keanu Reeves was not publicly linked to a single romantic partner. 20 years. In Hollywood. A town where relationships last about as long as a press cycle, and privacy is something you trade for relevance. Keanu traded nothing. He simply carried his grief and kept walking, and the world noticed. Not the grief, not at first. What they noticed was the kindness. Stories started leaking out of Hollywood like small miracles. Keanu taking pay cuts on The Devil's Advocate and The Replacements so the studios could afford to hire Al Pacino and Gene Hackman. Keanu giving up his seat on a crowded New York subway to a woman carrying a heavy bag. Keanu learning the name of every single crew member on every single set. Keanu stopping on the street to talk to a homeless man. Not for a photo, not for a headline, just because the man needed someone to talk to. In May of 2010, a photographer captured what would become one of the most famous images on the internet. Keanu Reeves, alone on a park bench in New York City, hunched over a sandwich, looking like the loneliest man alive. The image became a meme. Sad Keanu. The internet turned his pain into a joke, and Keanu, because he is Keanu, laughed it off years later. "I'm just eating a sandwich, man," he told Stephen Colbert. "I was thinking. I had some stuff going on. I was hungry." What the internet didn't know, or maybe chose not to see, was that behind the meme was a man who had been alone for over a decade. A man who went home every night to a house where no one was waiting. A man whose sister Kim had been diagnosed with leukemia in 1991 and had fought the disease for 10 years while Keanu sold his house, moved closer to her, cooked her meals, and quietly donated millions to cancer research through a private foundation he refused to put his name on. "I don't like attaching my name to it," he said. "I just let the foundation do what it does." In 2014, at the age of 49, Keanu Reeves did something nobody in Hollywood expected. He agreed to star in a low-budget action film about a retired hitman whose dog gets killed. The film was called John Wick. It was directed by two former stunt coordinators who had never directed a movie before. Nobody expected it to work. It grossed $86 million worldwide and launched one of the most successful action franchises in modern cinema. By the time John Wick Chapter 4 came out in 2023, the franchise had earned over $1 billion. Keanu celebrated by gifting his four-man stunt crew personalized Rolex Submariner watches. He had come back, not just as a movie star, but as something more rare, a symbol. The internet called him the internet's boyfriend. But the truth was simpler and sadder than any meme. He was just a man who had learned, through decades of loss, that the only thing worth doing in this life is being kind to the people standing next to you. And then, in May of 2019, Stephen Colbert asked him a question that stopped the world. "What do you think happens when we die, Keanu Reeves?" Keanu paused. He took a breath, and he said 5 words that made Colbert's eyes fill with tears. "I know that the ones who love us will miss us." He had met her 10 years earlier. In 2009, at a dinner party, Keanu was introduced to Alexandra, a visual artist with silver hair and a quiet intensity that matched his own. They didn't date. They became friends. They collaborated. In 2011, they published a book together called Ode to Happiness, pairing his poetry with her illustrations. In 2016, they published a second book, Shadows. For years, they were simply two people who understood each other's silences. Nobody knows exactly when the friendship became something more. What the world does know is that on a red carpet at the LACMA Art and Film Gala in November 2019, Keanu Reeves walked in holding a woman's hand. It was his first public appearance with a romantic partner in over 20 years. He was 55 years old. She was 46. They stood together smiling, and the internet lost its collective mind. The reaction was unlike anything Hollywood had seen. People didn't just celebrate the relationship. They celebrated the fact that Keanu had chosen a partner who looked her age, who had gray hair, who was an artist and an intellectual, and not a 22-year-old model. They celebrated the fact that after 20 years of grief, the nicest man in the world had found someone. But the real story wasn't the red carpet. The real story was the 10 years of friendship that came before it. 10 years of books and dinners and conversations, and a patience that most people in Hollywood don't have the attention span for. Alexandra didn't try to fix Keanu. She simply stood next to him until he was ready to let someone stand there. Keanu once said, Grief changes shape, but it never ends. He was right. The grief didn't end. Ava is still buried at Westwood. Jennifer is still beside her. The empty space where a family should have been is still there, and it always will be. But somewhere between the silence and the silver hair and the books full of shadow and happiness, Keanu Reeves learned something that took him 20 years to understand. You don't have to stop grieving to start living again. He is 61 years old now. He is still making movies. He is still riding motorcycles. He is still learning the names of crew members and giving away things that most people would keep. He is still the man who sat alone on a park bench eating a sandwich. Except now, when he goes home, someone is there. And maybe that's the part of his story that matters most. Not the money, not the fame, not the leather jacket and the guns and the impossible action sequences. The part that matters is the simplest part. A man who lost everything, who stayed kind anyway, and who, after 20 years of silence, finally let himself be loved again. If Keanu's story moved you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. We tell the real stories behind Hollywood's greatest legends, the ones the cameras never capture. I'll see you in the next one.